Recording started.
Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you to this week's Matrexit Discussion group call. Matrexit as in exiting the Matrix. For tactical sovereignty, like I always say, this wonderful Sunday, the first day of the week, not the seventh, not the Sabbath. And this evening, we are going to be discussing protecting our property. Which is what the state knows it as. It's kind of unusual for a lot of people to refer to their offspring as their property, but they are your tangible property, and that's the way the state sees it. Just like people don't realize part of their property is also their rights. Their rights are their property. That would be listed as an intangible property. And so this evening we're going to be going over some experiences some of us have had. I expected a few more of the people I know that have gone through this to be with us this evening, but they were unable to. But we're going to move forward with it anyway. And I think one of the first things that people realize when it comes to their offspring and it being deemed property, one of the first markers, I guess is a good way to put it, of that is when that birth certificate or certificate of live birth is created. That looks much like that certificate of title you have in your glove box, and there's kind of a reason why. But I've got a couple friends with me this evening. Jules is here with us. Cecelia is here with us. Jules, would you like to introduce yourself or anything?
Well, I don't know what should I tell about myself. I'm most commonly known as Julie Embry, and most commonly known for working the Cliven, Ammon, and Ryan Bundy cases in Oregon and Nevada. So if that kind of tells you who I am. I don't know if there's anything else. My person resides in Texas, and the woman is pursuing happiness on Oregon currently, but not always.
I'm from Oregon.
I'm from my mother, so that's odd.
Oh, yeah.
Are you Celia?
Cecelia, yeah.
Cecelia.
I'm still learning.
No, it's okay, but I don't mean it to be rude. I would give you a heads up because we have to correct the way we're talking because they taught us legalese, and so I like to help people change. If you change the way you talk, you change the way you think. So
absolutely,
yeah. So and
I was brought. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Brian, I wanted to reserve. I don't know how much time I know you're doing introductions right now, but I wanted to reserve just a few minutes to explain, after introductions, to explain to people that will be listening to this call later and the ones that are on it now as well. Sorry. How our children are property. Because I can show you how our children are property. So I wanted to reserve that if before we start talking about it, so people can understand how their children are their property.
That sounds beautiful. Well, Cecelia, you want to give us a quick introduction, and then we'll let Jules kick in with what she has for info on this.
Okay. Well, I'm Cecelia, and I had an experience with the entity CPS and other entities about 2 years ago, and that's kind of what put me on this path, like very focus more on this path to help families stay together. And it was a result from a phone call, and just I got to see how things are done and how these entities work, and it was very interesting. And yeah, so I'm here.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Yeah, I have Jules let us know where she stands with this and what she's found. And this is going to be interesting because Jules and I have never really spoke on this particular topic. However,
Yeah.
it is obvious that we can tell here that she does know the difference between us and our person. And that plays into it big time. So, Jules, why don't you take it away?
Okay, so I'm going to use the Bible as a point of reference. So I don't want to eliminate or ostracize anybody that is not necessarily religious or whatever you want to call it. But um, to preface what I'm going to tell you, I believe full disclosure is in what we call the Bible. Too much of it is in the Bible. Okay, and I think that I think your disclosure is there. I can explain that a little bit better at length another time, but think about how the West was, we'll say, won or settled. People, families came and they rushed over here. They could have a certain amount of land. They were given stakes, 4 stakes, and they could claim whatever piece of property that they picked. But you had to be the first to claim it, right? And to claim it, you would figure out, okay, how many acres are we getting, and then you'll put your stake there, 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 and there. That's how you stake a claim in property. That's how you become a settler. Okay, so you have settlers and settlers. Now, when I don't want to, I, I'm just going to be, blunt here. When a man claims a woman, he's the one with the stake. He's the one who's going to stake his claim. The woman is the fertile soil, and the crop belongs to the man. That's his crop. Okay? Your children are your crop. He plants his seed in her fertile soil. Your children are your property. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yep.
In anything that doesn't make common sense, whether I say it, whether God comes down or a burning bush says it, if it doesn't make common sense, just throw it out. Just throw it out. But if if you can just look at things in their purest form, you'll see it. All of the veils are moved back, and it's so easy to see. But if that doesn't concrete it in your mind that a seed is planted and the crop is your property, I don't know how I'm gonna convince you that they are, because for our minds being so brainwashed from day one, um, it's hard to say I'm going to look at things clearly instead of I'm going to look at things through what I'm told. So I don't know if that'll help anybody in the future, but that's my revelation.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and one of the things that I like to point out as well, when you're talking about the people moving westward and the settlers, people also moving into the lands. If you kind of think about things the way we were taught as children in school about, say, the pilgrims coming over, and they're often referred to as settlers as well, we need to realize that that's actually legal terminology. And a settler is a position in a trust.
Well,
And
actually, Brian, that's exactly right, except for it's a difference between an ER and an OR.
yep,
So one settles on the land and stakes his claim for property, and the other settles all matters for a trust.
yep,
Now, here's, I'm going to throw this out there. It's not in today's discussion because I'm not going into that. but the very luxurious car that I travel in, the paperwork on that car, the promissory note was signed, comma, settlor. And they discharged the whole thing in 9 months. It was my property in 9 months. Never demanded a payment after I got the keys and drove off with it. Okay.
9 months, that's an interesting time period.
It's perfect, isn't it? It's a perfect time frame to create property.
Absolutely.
And you know that when you claim property, you have to develop it. You're responsible. You can't keep it if you can't show any development. So you have to be a steward of property. Does that make sense?
Correct. And the way I look at things when it comes to the offspring and when that birth certificate is created, from little hints and things, and some things they've blatantly said regarding like UCC 9 and the things I've heard out of the mouth of judges, is really what has happened is they've created an artificial entity there, and that document, that certificate of live birth, is the registration. It's the creation of that artificial entity. And we'll notice most of the time that the date on that for that entity, the date will be about 10 days or so after the actual birthing. And a lot of times people, and myself included, we call vital statistics asking questions. And one thing that always stands in common with what they say is that that record that's created is recording an event. They always use that word, event. And I think a lot of people think the event is the birth. That's not the event they're talking about. The event in their legal world is the event of creating that artificial entity and the registration of it. And so now the position that you're placed in, because we've been told from the beginning, you don't use that for identification. You're not supposed to use that. And even I've read on Vital Statistics blogs, they'll say that they say, unfortunately, this cannot be used as identification because it does not include a photo, which makes 100% sense. To me, there's another reason why it can't be used as identification is because it doesn't say what that document is for. The closest thing it'll say to what it's for, it'll say male or female. It used to say boy or girl a long time ago, but now it says male or female, which is a scientific term. So male or female what? They don't say male or female what. Is it a documented horse? Is it a papered dog or an animal? They don't tell you what. So yeah, they kind of leave things kind of ambiguous there. So people automatically kind of get tricked though. They go and they use it like for driver's license or maybe for doctors or other different things with the infants, and don't realize that we're kind of being led right into the path of being the representative for that artificial entity that they created.
Well, Brian,
And
we still can't seem to nail down the definition of male and female. Okay, it's still very fluid because now we have females that used to claim they were males, and because nobody knows what anything is.
right, and they're muddying the waters even more with that whole topic, aren't they?
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, they were muddy anyway. But now they remove the veil and show you that you don't know what it is either. It's nothing. It's nothing. Everything is nothing. Everything is a fantasy. Everything is created in somebody's mind. So when you're talking about the birth certificates, the certificate is the admission of the real thing exists. It's certifying that the real thing exists, which is the same thing as if you see my shadow. My shadow lets you know that the real thing is near. Does that make sense?
Right.
So what people are familiar with is what they call the straw man, the legal person. That's the shadow. And they operate only in shadows, and they operate only in representation. That's all that matters.
Exactly. And they've referred to it also, they refer to it as an organization. And myself, I think maybe to get closer to what it really is would be a partnership. Because if you look in the definitions of, what things are a person, a lot of people jump straight to corporations. Well, sorry, you're not a corporation. There's too many other things that need to be qualified for a corporation to exist. But you are a corporate structure. And other things that are corporate structures are LLCs, trusts, partnerships, organizations, and sometimes associations.
Well,
But
I want to clarify real quick, Brian, what you said. You're not. Your person is. You getting a person created for your use, for your exclusive use, is, in my opinion, part of your birthright. Because as sovereigns, as kings and queens, we're not we have to come with clean hands. There's no way to operate here with clean hands. So you have to have basically a servant to do your dirty work. So the problem is that we're using their person, their legal fiction, instead of
exactly.
creating our own.
Exactly. There's a video out that it was very popular, probably still is popular. And I thought it was really interesting when I first watched it. And I thought, but there's something not quite right about it. And it was a video made by a gentleman by the name of Christopher. Can't think of the last name right now. But it's called A Planned Trespass. And after doing more research, I was like, oh, I understand, I comprehend now why that video, something just didn't seem quite right about it. And it's because it's not necessarily that the trespass is being done on the part of the state. The problem is the trespass is being done on our part. Is that they created this entity, they created this organization, like you said, everything is in representative capacity, so they see you as an agent for that organization. But what's the problem? The problem is you are trespassing on something they created. You're the one automatically guilty of the trespass. You see what I'm saying?
Well, yes, and it's kind of like a uh, misuse of their property. So if you come on my property, you have to behave the way I say. Okay, I had an attorney coming out here um, one time, and I told him, sure, yeah, you can come out and you can. There was a dispute about a machine out here that had been left for 10 years. And when I came out here, I started making demands that it be removed. Anyway, and then I went to the county courthouse and started proceedings on claiming abandoned property. And there's a process to go through, which I did, uh, not under my name, but somebody else's name. And so the guy who thought he still owned it sent his attorney out. He wanted to see and take pictures and stuff, blah, blah, blah. And I told him, I'll meet you at the gate because the gate is locked. And I said, you'll have to sign this waiver before you come in. And I said, I'll give you a minute to read it. It's one page because I love sticking to one page. And on that one page, he waived all his rights. In that one page, he consented that if he broke any of our private laws, that he would be judged here by uh, by a jury, and that the decision would be final, and that he could not dispute the findings of the court. Anyway, he signed it, and I escorted him to where he wanted to go, and then I escorted him off. We're misusing their property. When you're using the legal name that they gave you as part of your birthright, being born on this soil that's commonly referred to as America, that's what they're prosecuting you for. Because by using it, just like a website, by using this website, you're agreeing to our terms and conditions. Now, because you don't understand what the terms and conditions are of the legal person that you got once you arrived here, you're violating their terms and conditions. That's what you're being prosecuted for. And you're waiving your rights, just like that attorney did. Everything is so much simpler because if you use your own person, instead of using their legal person that they created for you to use, that judge in that case, in that probate court, because the guy was dead, it was his son was sending his attorney out here. The judge had issued an order that they could come out and get it. And the estate, the decedent estate, sent a private letter to the judge and explained to him what was going to happen if he violated if he violated the estate, trespassed on the estate. And trespass doesn't mean coming on the property, okay? Just him filling out that order, that piece of paper, was a trespass on the estate, because it's a declaration of war, and you're breaching the peace with the estate. And that's the one thing they can't do, is breach the peace. And that judge stood down, and that was the last we heard of it, and the equipment was sold. You just can't use their person.
All right, Cecilia's gonna stay up for us this evening. So, Cecelia, why don't you go into what you have gone through with your offspring and resulting things from it?
Okay, so like how I made my own private documents and stuff, and then the interactions with CPS.
Sure.
Okay. Well, I began this journey before my first son was brought forth into the world. It was through the sovereignty stuff, the sovereignty citizen or sovereign citizen movement, and I started researching the birth certificate and what I could use in place. And for him, I did an affidavit of live birth. I've learned lots since then. And for my second son, I had a unassisted home birth and did the same thing for him, an affidavit of live birth. And my most recent pregnancy was what resulted in CPS thinking they can get involved. I brought forth surprise twins, and one was living, breathing, full of life, and our other son had died several weeks before. And that night, I had done a lot of research on on their rules, that the 20-week mark was when you're supposed to, it's considered a stillbirth and you're supposed to call. We didn't call because I based on what I knew and what I felt through the pregnancy. And so fast forward to 3 months after, March 6th of 2020, my sister-in-law called from Oregon, 2,000 miles away or about, and said that we murdered our baby because we didn't go to the hospital and we weren't medical professionals and we couldn't know that our baby had died, that he was still alive somehow. And so that night, they came knocking on our door, and it was about 10 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock. And so they arrested me and my husband, and they stole our kids from their beds. And that was the beginning of the interactions. And
Cecelia, what were the charges that you and your husband were arrested on, if you don't mind?
it was the Human Skeletal Remains Act, or Prohibited Act, basically saying that we, because we were planning a springtime burial, and in that statute, that thing, it said that we knowingly threw away, abandoned the remains, even though on
Thank you.
hmm
Thank you. I get the gist of it. I
Yeah.
know it's hard to
yeah
I get the gist. Okay. Thank you.
um
I'm sorry for your
anyway,
loss.
thank you. So they charge us with that. Of course, it was all a lot, and according to everything I've researched, I knew just enough to know that what was happening wasn't right. But I didn't know enough. I knew enough to get myself in more trouble, if that makes sense. Like so I signed stuff. It was a learning experience, and so with the CPS, I'll just focus on that since that's what's pertinent here. With the CPS, we had a meeting, and it was like a pre-meeting before the court with a mediator. And we were very blessed that we met people who were on our side. It was very clear. It was all very spiritual. Like the right people were placed on our side for our boys, to get our boys back. And they asked about why we didn't get the birth certificate and social security number, and they were like, what are you hiding? And I chose my words very carefully, and I said that, according to our faith, we believe that we're all born free, in that we have the right to choose the contracts and stuff that we enter into. And I was like, there's no laws that say we have to do these things. And we got a lot of eye rolls, and like it was very interesting. People, when I brought up the Bible and our beliefs, people got squirmy in their seats. And then we faced the judge, and with that, he was livid. I know a lot of people are like, judges are all bad, but I think he had kind eyes. He looked at us, and he was visibly upset, and he was like, when he asked the CPS people, they're like, what's going on? They were like, I don't know. We just got this. And he was like, if I wasn't the judge and I didn't have a whole bunch on my plate, I'd be your attorney. So that was kind of nice. I think that helped quite a bit to have the judge on our side. with, knowing just enough. And so
I think what the important thing that you said
uh-huh.
is according to our faith, because that's the one thing they can't touch.
Yeah, I didn't word it exactly like that. I said our religious beliefs. Like I said, I've learned a lot since the whole ordeal, and but they did get really squirmy. I noticed when I brought up our faith and our belief or our knowing of creation, they didn't like that, and I made it a point to make our stand spiritually like this. You're stepping into this house, and this is which side we've chosen. Like I made sure to have the Bible out every time they came over. And anyway, so the birth certificate came up one more time, why we didn't, and our court appointed attorney asked for anything that would back up why we did that, why we chose to do private records. And it was the old tactical sovereignty group had the post about the passport and the family Bible being sufficient to get a passport. And I found the Social Security Administration brochure PDF online, and it states in there that it is voluntary to get a number. And so I sent all that stuff to the lawyer, and it never came up again. And after that, we were just, I prayed so much, and I made an effort to be kind to the people who had taken our boys. That was really hard because I was so angry. But I prayed for them, and I offered them drinks and made them feel like they were at home, because that's all I could do at that point. And we did everything they asked of us. Doctor's appointments, and they went out of their way, which we didn't get recordings of this, which I record everything. If you have to deal with them, record all the way up into the end. Record everything and get it in writing if you can. They made a point. They were like, oh, well, they're wards of the state. And I was like, in my head, I was like, no, they're not. And I just held my tongue. And I was just like, no, they're not. And they're like, okay, well, we got our boys back, and we took them to all these doctor's appointments, and the social workers, they were like, everything's going to be paid for. They're on Medicaid and all this stuff. And I was like, no, they're not. They can't qualify for that because they don't have a social security number. And so we did all that, and we got our boys home, and then the judge signed a 30-day thing from when they got home to basically allow them to stop by whenever they wanted. And during that time, we started receiving the medical bills from all the visits that were supposed to be paid for. And I was like, oh, look at here. And we started making phone calls. And even the foster parents, when they took the boys to get checked out because they got sick while they were away, the doctors there, they didn't know what was going on. They couldn't get a hold of CPS to get payment. And we started getting our lawyers, started making phone calls and asking, and they talked to 3 different CPS attorneys, and they still weren't getting any answers. And they finally copped out like, oh, well, they were returned in less than a month, so it's the parents' responsibility to pay for everything. And I'm like, right.
It's the owners. The property owner is responsible for the maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they prove to you. Is since they don't have that title of ownership, they had to send the bill to the correct principal.
Yes, exactly. And I just proved that they were never wards of the state, and they had stolen our property. And I we got them back within the month, and we got the bills taken care of. It all worked out. But with that, I mean, I started researching ward, well, like what ward actually means, and it means to take full responsibility, usually of a child, and that includes financially. And I was just thinking, okay. And so that I have all the proof I need if they ever come knocking again.
When was the time frame of
It was
the bills that came in? How long ago has this been? 6 months? A year?
Oh, it's been well, let's see. March 6th they were taken, and they were brought back the 25th
Of what
of
year?
March 2020.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
we
so I just want to throw this out there for anybody that's listening, that this is where a property owner claims damages to their property. Well, you
Okay.
made me do X, Y, and Z under threat and duress, being that they
Mhm.
made me take them to a doctor. Okay, and there was
Mhm.
expenses. There's liabilities here. This is where, because you do own the property, this is
Mhm.
where you can go to your Secretary of State website, download the tort claim,
Tort
fill it
claim.
out.
Okay.
They have 6 months to pay or deny the tort claim. When you wait out the 6 months, they have waived, because now you're going after their insurance, which is
Mhm.
bonds, and now you can bill the state for
Okay.
its agency. The state would be the principal, and the CPS would be the agent. Now you
Mhm.
can hold the state liable for treble damages. Okay, and the state can't claim. They have no immunity defenses. The court won't hear any immunity defenses. Okay, and the reason I'm telling you that is because I'm not telling you to do that. You maybe want to stay in peace with them. You may want to just move beyond, and that's fine. But if people don't understand, you have to, people in mass, we have to keep these people busy, um, as busy as they're keeping us. And we
Mhm.
have to spank them. Okay, we have to. And so that's why I wanted to interject that. So it's not necessarily my advice to you,
Yeah.
but I want people to know that that's the way. You cannot sue a state or federal. You cannot sue me without exhausting your administrative remedies first. And that means that if I hit you with my car, uh, you cannot sue me. You have to sue my insurance. You have to
Uh-huh.
claim it on my insurance, my bond.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I don't pay for insurance, but I'm just saying hypothetically. If that doesn't pay or it is denied, now I'm stripped of everything and I stand before God naked. Okay. And
Uh-huh.
so do they. So I just
Yeah.
wanted that on this recording for anybody listening. So anyway.
Okay. Yeah, we've gone back and forth, and it's resources and
This touches on something though that we're really starting to see, I think, amped up today. I mean, we're going on 2 years of this new invisible boogeyman that everybody's supposed to be afraid of, and we're seeing things now kind of put into the minds of people. Headlines like in newspapers that say that parents need to come to the realization that their children are really um, part of the community or owned by the community. They're not really theirs. And so this is getting away from this fact that it is your property And it's your decision whether you want to get a medical procedure done to them. It's not the community's decision whether or not this is going to be done to them. And the same even comes for your own personal body as well. So we're really seeing them lately starting to even more, like I said, muddy the waters or gray out the real truth to this whole scenario. And so
Yeah.
Well,
it's very important to comprehend these things.
Well, and they've acknowledged by the act of Congress, they've acknowledged a long time ago that you have the right to refuse medical treatment. There's an act of Congress. It's called the right to refuse medical treatment. And that means she didn't have to take her property to their doctors. Okay. But I think you took the path of least resistance. And I think sometimes that's wise to operate when they have a hostage. You operate in the spirit of cooperation. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in their language, that would be referred to as the peaceful settlement of disputes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, always go for peace. Always go for peace. If they insist on war, then you go to war.
Yeah. That's we didn't have we wanted to go after the charges. We wanted to do something, but we just didn't have we're the only ones our boys have where we are
Now,
at right now.
did they drop the criminal charges?
No, I'm serving probation. I was ordered to take um 2 classes, which one I have 4 more classes, and the classes that got it basically, the criminal side was just, I need to look over it again because so much just didn't make sense.
So you
But
entered into a settlement agreement with them? Is
yeah,
that what you did? Okay.
yes,
Okay. Because um, it's a peace treaty. That's what it
hmm
is. It's a contract,
yes,
and I know some people are adamant against them, and some people, I negotiate their peace treaties for them, uh, but and I encourage them to take them just because it's simpler. But um, anyway, that's why I wanted to ask you. So anybody who's listening that has any judgmental mentality about that is sometimes, especially when children are involved, a hostage situation, a peace treaty is the wisest route to go. And remember, peace treaties, a treaty is law of the land. So once you enter a peace treaty, you cannot violate that. Be
hmm
very, very bad. So anybody who's listening, do not violate your contracts.
no, we're doing everything we've been asked, even though the classes are for people who drink and have addictions, and
Yeah.
it's very hard to, but I'm going to the class and I'm going to
You
finish
know,
them.
I mean, I only know what you've told on this call,
hmm
but I want to tell you, everything sounds like you guys stood in honor, and y'all were so brave, and I believe what's in your heart is why you have a successful story. And I think you guys both acted honorably throughout it. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons. I've got chill bumps just telling you this, but I don't,
Thank you.
I know that won't heal you, but
hmm
I hope it does comfort you.
And thank you so much. That's all we did was try to be honest and stay in honor as much as possible. And thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, let me give you a little break here, Cecelia, and touch on something here when it comes to contracts. And a lot of people are very afraid of contracts, but they don't realize really the power that contracts can have. And they're not against you, not always against you. You can look through contracts. You're supposed to look through them. Don't accept a unilateral contract. Keep it bilateral. If put your input in. Hey, I don't like this part. I don't like that part. And let me give you a quick example. I purchased a rental property one time that was currently being rented, and so when I went there the first time to take a look at things, I met the people that were renting it. And I said to him, yeah, I'm, the new owner of the property. I have a rental agreement here. I'm not making any changes in your rent, not making any changes in anything. This is just switching from your previous landlord to, a new owner here. And they said, no. They said, we already signed a contract. We already signed a rental agreement. We're not signing another one. And I said, okay, that's fine. And I left it alone. And about 5 months later, they contacted me and they said, yeah, we've got a problem. And I said, okay. They said, our AC went out. And I said, okay, well, I don't really know what to tell you about your AC going out. All I know is that when I purchased this piece of property, the AC was working. So, when you guys leave, it still needs to be working. And they said, they were confused. What do you mean? And I said, let me explain something to you about contracts. That contract I offered you people before that you refused to sign, I said, a contract doesn't just protect me, but it would also have protected you as well. And I would have been bound, depending on how the contract was written, to take care of the AC for you. But since you wanted to stand on your old landlord's contract that you signed with them, it's now void. So he's not going to be able to help you either. And so now this is up to you to take care of.
Well, what people have to understand is that people want to get away from their liabilities. Okay, they want to hide from liabilities, duties, and responsibilities. That's why they set up a corporation in the first place, to protect assets. Okay, the thing is, people have to understand that duties, responsibilities, and liabilities come from a contract, but so do the benefits. So
Absolutely.
there's no benefit. You had no liability there, and they had no benefits. And that's why contracts, listen, you can be afraid of contracts all you want, and you will get nothing ever.
I love contracts.
You might as well go shit in a box, okay, and piss in the rain gutters. You'll never have anything without contracts, but you have to control and have input, not have, but exercise your right to input into those contracts. Furthermore, you have to demand the contract. Stop throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Get the contract. Because they're invisible. You haven't seen them. Get them. Well, we can't proceed here until I have a copy of the contract that you have up there, because I haven't been privy to it before, but I know that you're enforcing a contract, and I need a copy of it. Furthermore, it has not been admitted into evidence. And you shouldn't even be looking at it until it's been admitted into evidence. It cannot be admitted into evidence until a jury has been impaneled and the trial has begun.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Input. Lots of good information. Well,
Now,
since we're talking, go ahead.
well, I was just going to cut in here. As far as the contract goes, I've heard from somebody retired from the judiciary say that one of the problems that we have, and I'm glad she brought up like invisible contracts. There's a great book out there by Mercier that people can look up called Invisible Contracts. You can
You guys
print
have
that
got
off.
to read that. Anybody listening to this, you've got to get that and read it. It's a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. Because and what this gentleman said is the problem we really have is that all through our life we have agreed to hundreds, maybe thousands of contracts without realizing it. But the real problem that we have is that we've never created our own contract. And that's what we really need to do. And a lot of people are probably going to be wondering also, like with the offspring, well, what are some of those first steps? And to me, it's not just preferably having a home birth and avoiding maybe the paperwork that they're going to try and force at that time. But I would recommend that even prior to the offspring arriving, I call it the physical manifestation day, is what I call it. That's the day of nativity. But I recommend that you generally will have an idea a month ahead of time when this offspring will be arriving. And so go to the local paper, put in 2 consecutive notices in the business section that you are expecting the arrival of some new property, and put your claim in there. That way, your claim, first in line, first in time. You've made the claim before anybody else can ever force or push anything else to try and make a claim on your property.
And I want to add something that a lot of people, I've never heard anybody discuss, is if they are going to create a legal person for your little baby, and you want to stay in peace because you're not sure, you don't understand, you can't really articulate, or for whatever reason, okay, name that legal person, but call your little baby whatever you want, right? So you can say, when you fill out the paperwork, because the hospital won't let you leave without filling out the paperwork. They said, well, when you fill out the paperwork, make it John Henry Smith, make up whatever you want, but then name it name the little sucker. So that's naming, and then you'll call, Jim Gunther. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So he's always known himself as Jim Gunther, right? Or James Gunther. But this person over here, he'll never use that legal person. That legal person will never be used. And go and create him his own person. Okay? Call it the Gunther Family Trust.
Yeah, Jules, you brought up
everything that he does needs to be done through the trust.
Jules, you
He
brought up
represents the
something
trust.
earlier. That's a great option there. And I would say up until maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that was about the only option we had. But I think that there's something you brought up earlier that they are now doing, that when I look at a problem, I try and see how you can take that problem and turn it into a solution for yourself. And you're talking about the muddying of the waters with the male and female issue, and even the boy-girl thing nowadays. So I think they are actually giving us another out here that can be used. And it would be this. When the info for that paperwork is requested, such as the name, okay, and also on that is going to be the sex. How about if we just start using the game they're using and say, you know what, I'm sorry, but my offspring is too young right now. I think we're going to have to wait a few years and let it decide if it's male or
To be
female.
determined.
I think we need I think we need to wait a few years and let it choose what name it wants to go by, because it would be totally socially unacceptable for us to force anything
Well, it'd
on
be
this
racist.
offspring. It would be racist and white supremacist and whatever else you want to throw at it. So I think it would be fun to play with that and just use what they're using. Hey, you guys came up with it. It wasn't my idea. It was your idea. So I'm just going with it. You know, we're going to let the child decide.
What's most important in my mind is that you give them a person that you created so that you have jurisdiction, and let them use that. For example, somebody says, well, how am I going to get a job? Well, you're going to subcontract, right? They're going to hire the JKPE trust, and I'm going to show up because everything that I do is for the trust. I don't work for the trust. Everything I do is for the trust and has to benefit the beneficiaries. So they'll make out the check to the trust. And when they want you to fill out a W-2, W-4, whatever those forms are, or if you come in as a trust, you say you'll be hiring the trust, but I'll be the one who shows up. Okay. And that is, that they would want a W-9, but a W-9 is inappropriate here because the trust doesn't deal in securities. Okay, so you simply say you will get an invoice, just like you don't have the electric company or the phone company fill out a W-9. You just pay the bill when it comes. So people think, well, how's my kid going to work if they don't have a birth certificate, right? Or a social security number. Okay. Well, I don't have that. So what you do is the trust, the JKP space E trust has its own social security number. Okay. It has an EIN, and that is a social security number for a entity. Okay. So you say, oh, no problem. Yeah, here is the EIN number. Here's the social. And for the birth certificate, you can give them a certified copy of the certificate of existence. Okay, that's the birth certificate. This thing was birthed when I ordained it, and ordained means I put it in writing. Okay, so here's the birth certificate, certificate of existence, and the social is the 9-digit number that I had the IRS give it, just as a way to recognize it. And then I told the IRS, hey, look, you sent me this, and it says that the trust has to file an income tax return, but according to such and such, it doesn't. And they sent back, they said, hey, sorry, we corrected our records according to your request. And so there's no filing for income returns for the trust. So even if they did want to 1099 the trust, it would be irrelevant because the trust has no filing requirements, because I've made a peace treaty with the federal air quote government. And because your corporation didn't create it.
Yeah. So for trust,
you say, well, how am I going to jump this hurdle? Look, if you can't jump the hurdle, walk around it and keep freaking going. Okay? Everything that you think is complicated, think about it. The last thing you think about, I want you to lay there and worry about it. And I mean worry, that's meditate on it as you're falling asleep. And when you wake up in the morning, you're going to realize, because your ego shuts down and your subconscious figures it out. And in the morning, you look at it again with such clarity, and you're like, oh, it's simple. It's simple. Just because they say I got to jump a hurdle, it doesn't mean I have to jump a hurdle. Those are not my laws. Those are y'all's laws. Okay? Those are your corporation's private laws. I'm working with my trust private laws. And so according to my trust laws, I get to walk around it.
Okay. So trusts, that is something that I have tried to learn about, but all the stuff I have found is very complicated.
No. You're thinking that you got to go out there and figure out how to set up one of their kinds of trust.
Okay.
No, just by being on this phone call together, I'm trusting you. I'm trusting you to
Okay.
not lie to me. I'm trusting you to be honorable. All kinds of trust. Okay, I'm trusting
Okay.
you with my time. Okay, I'm getting
Mhm.
benefits from this, and I have
Okay.
a duty and responsibility to you, and you have a duty and responsibility to me, and you get the benefits from me. This is quid quo pro. This is reciprocity. We are in a
Mhm.
trust right now. The rules of this trust are the rules that Brian gave at the beginning of the trust. Okay,
Okay.
he said, if you want to comment and be unmuted, say so now. Speak now, or forever hold your peace. Those were the terms and conditions of being part of this trust.
Okay.
So you don't have to. Oh my God, how am I going to set up this trust? Set it
Uh-huh.
up. Boom! It is set up. Give it a name. Give it a name. Nominate it. Give it a name.
Mhm.
Use it. And the only rule for this trust that I everything by, through, and in.
Mhm.
The rule is it has to benefit the beneficiaries, and it has to survive. It has to annihilate any threats that come against its survival. It has to annihilate those threats, and it has to benefit the beneficiaries. Okay?
Okay.
At the same time, in discussing, how uh, the children are going to grow up and get work and things like that. Like you already pointed out earlier, Cecelia, they show right in the Department of State regarding passports that just a Bible entry is good enough. And if people notice, in the old Bibles, they would have places for births, marriages, deaths, all of the events would be there. But at the same time, some people will say, well, maybe a more modern Bible doesn't have that. You might have to go find a specific Bible. But you also notice in the beginning of the Bible that there's blank pages in there. And there's blank pages there for a reason. They don't have to print that form for you. You can do it yourself in that,
But
So that's that's
Bible
a
is
solution.
subjective. But the word Bible is subjective anyway.
Right.
Bible means you say it means. So my Bible is this 6-inch 3-ring binder that the trust resides in. That's the Bible right there. Those are the rules, laws, ethos, morals. They're all in there. So you can put it on a freaking piece of paper and you can say, this is our Bible. Okay, this is page 1 of our Bible, and that's all you're privy to because I'm under a non-disclosure agreement with the Bible not to disclose the contents of the Bible, but here other than page 1. Okay, and or you can say with the exception of section 12, clause 2, where it's called a description of property. Okay, so I can show you this pursuant to Article 12, Section 2 of the Trust Constitution. Okay, that's where the trust registers. That's where I register as an agent of the trust, where I register the property of the trust.
Okay.
These days, I keep looking at things that's happening and see them in a different light. And this might be kind of hard for some people to bite off because we've all been trained in a very different way. We've been taught this cookie cutter life that we're supposed to live. But people are worrying today about, say, for instance, keeping their occupation because they might get forced to get a jab or something like that. And I'm seeing it in a different light, that actually the system is pushing us in the direction that we were originally supposed to go in. We're supposed to be in service one to another. Our employment is supposed to be our responsibility. We should be, self-employed. We should be creating, products for our state, the benefits for our state, for our people. That's the way life worked for thousands of years until the whole corporate, structure came along with different companies and, people working at Wendy's or,
Basically,
GM,
let me reiterate that in a different light. People who are smart enough to govern themselves, and let me tell you who that is, in case you're wondering. That's the people talking on this phone call, and that's the people who are listening to this phone call live, and the people who will listen to it recording, because those people are interested in self-governance. Okay, and if you're interested in it, you're qualified for it. And if you're able or interested in self-government, governing yourself, you should have your own company, not a corporation, your own business. Okay, and you should be hiring like-minded people so that they put food on their table too. We should be constantly looking for ways to create. I'm going to create a scenario. I'm going to create a company. I'm going to create jobs for like-minded people. We should be not employers, because employers are not tax collectors. Okay, but we should be, and they should all be what the government calls subcontractors. Okay, they should be working for themselves. They will invoice you. They will use their own computer. They will use their own truck, and they will get compensated for you for those things. And technically, we should be paying them in silver and gold.
Yeah.
Yes, and you brought up an interesting word there, creator. And one of the things I've always said is, if we were made in the image of our creator, then does that not mean that we should be creators also? Absolutely. We should be creators too, if we are made in his image. And that's what it's one of the things that disturbs me. I really think that when people get out of grade school or high school today, they should be equipped with the knowledge to start their own business or their own company, however you want to term it. But instead, they're taught how to be just good employees. And bringing up our offspring, that's what we need to be teaching them. Ways to look for opportunity, ways to fill needs within the community. Because that's really the avenue we should be taking. And that's where you're going to find your self-fulfillment.
We should be creating our own societies within their societies. Okay? Declare your independence, be independent from their society and dependent on the one that you create. But I also want to go back to something you said, Cecelia, about the passport. People have been looking high and low. How do I get on that do not detain list? Do not detain list. The first paragraph of the passport says, do not delay or hinder the bearer of this passport. Delay means to slow down. No, yeah, hinder means to stop, and delay means to slow down. If you want a document, use that. You don't have to be a driver with a driver's license to go work for Walmart. Okay? It's just a matter of thinking outside the box, because everybody's afraid of what I'm going to have to give up if I govern myself. Nothing. You gain everything, and you can give to others. You can create situations where people can prosper and be successful in self-governance.
That's why I've said for a while now that one of the biggest issues that we have is that we've been trained to think and act like peasants. And it's time that we stop doing that and start looking at the real solutions. It's, for instance, like the passport instead of the driver's license. creating associations. What does it say, even in the Constitution and in international law, is that the state cannot impair the obligation of a contract, rather a private contract. Well, private contract, what's that? That's your association or your trust.
And they also can't keep you from association. They cannot keep you from assembling. Okay, so where you go, I'm going to an assembly. Where are you coming from? I'm coming from an assembly. You know what? Because the only time that prosecuting anybody is written in the Constitution is for your representatives and your legislatures. Okay? And it says that they cannot be arrested on their way to or from an assembly.
Correct. Correct.
But we have to stop looking at things like, I'll never figure this out. No, just strip it down to its bare bones. And I was telling somebody this the other day, and I think it's worthy of throwing it up here on this recording. When you're reading things and you think, oh, it's just overwhelming, highlight everything that is not surrounded by commas. Okay? A semicolon is a run-on sentence, but it's not a run-on sentence because of the semicolon. It's really two sentences. Okay? If you remove everything that's in the commas, read what you've got highlighted. Highlight everything that's not in between commas. So everything that comes first before the first comma, don't highlight what comes in between those two commas, and keep going like that. And you'll have a complete sentence sitting that will make perfect sense to you. Simplify, simplify, simplify.
You brought up,
and remember that that's their horse shit. You only have to stick to your horse shit. That's the only horse shit you have to shovel is yours. If you'll start shoveling your own horse shit. But if you don't, they'll say you're shoveling theirs.
You brought up the right of association, the right of assembly. And I think people should realize that the power of these associations is so strong, and they've known for a very long time how strong they are. It's actually what they use.
That's right.
They have all their own little associations, and they've known this for many years. You can go back to, I think it was circa 200 AD, and one of the rulers, Playa, went to Trajan. Trajan was one of the Holy Roman Empire rulers. He was an emperor. Okay, and Playa went to him and said, I've had several fires in my community, and he said, I'm thinking about putting together a fire brigade. And he wanted to get permission from Emperor Trajan to do this. And Emperor Trajan told him no. Emperor Trajan said, do you realize that if you put 20, 30 men together as a brigade, and you only have, say, a fire once every 3-4 months, whatever, there's not much for them to do. So what's going to happen is these men are going to sit together and they're going to talk. They're going to plot. They're going to plan. And they could become an enemy. They're going to conspire. They're going to conspire against you potentially. So Emperor Trajan told him, no, you cannot start a fire brigade.
What's another thing that they create a lot of? Agencies, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many agencies does that corporation have, right? What does your person that you create, you trust, or your private membership association, how many agents does it have? Because I'm telling you, it doesn't have enough. If it doesn't have as many as they have, you better keep creating agencies. So mine has a department or agency of registration. Okay, it has its own vital statistics. It has its own secretary, like a secretary of state. It has its own district attorney. It has its own prosecutors, its own judges, and it has its own courts. They are nothing but corporations that have set up all of these different branches on their tree. How many branches are you going to set up on your tree?
And you're intended to have these as well. And I can
Yes.
easily prove that. If you go to the Constitution and you look at the so-called rights in there, what are one of those rights? It says you're supposed to be secure in your papers and your persons, plural.
Right. And it does not say persons that they create.
Right.
And so when you're looking for security, get in your person that you created, because their created person for you, there's no security, there's no rights, there's no benefits. It's all bad for you. Okay? Get in your own persons and make as many as you need, but from all under the umbrella of one. So when I told the IRS, hey, you made a mistake, this trust is not required. I said, we believe. See, they cannot question our beliefs. Okay. So when we said we believe that it doesn't have to report income, that it doesn't have to file. And they said, whoops, our bad. You're right. What I told them is Legacy Ministries, that's a creation of mine. That's a person. Legacy Ministries, it only exists on paper. It does not have an EIN. It has never been acknowledged by any other corporation. But Legacy Ministries ordained the Julie K. Pruitt Space Embry Trust. And they're like, oh, our bad. There's no filing requirements. Everything. Let's say I forget your name. Let me look here. Cecelia. Let's say Cecelia, you're like, well, I just can't get the confidence that you have. I need a trust, but I don't know how to set one up. I don't know how to trust myself. Okay, to just say it is done. It is finished. Okay. And I said, no worries. Legacy Ministries will ordain another trust. And you'll be under the same protection, and you can operate that agency, that person.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So
Yeah, that does.
Because of the trust laws, it has to benefit the beneficiaries. So you'd have to compensate and say, well, as long as we're under the protection of your trust, then we'll. So, like, let's say that that your property is being attacked, okay, and let's go for property tax, okay. And I say, no worries, sign it over to the trust. Here's a contract. The trust will shelter it and harbor it, okay, because it's being harassed by a government. So it can take shelter and harbor here for 6 months. How much do they want from you? Well, they want $2,500. So for $2,000, we'll harbor your property. It'll be returned to you at the end of 6 months, but that gives you 6 months of shelter and protection. And that's what a sovereign has to do, by the way, is it has to protect, okay, and provide and shelter and feed, okay. For $2,000, you get your stuff together and the trust will hand it back over to you in exchange for $2,000. Now, I've kept the laws of the trust. The beneficiaries now have benefited, and you've benefited. And you had duties and responsibilities, and so did we. Right? So if let's say that you say, well, how about 1,500? Okay, all right, that's fine. And now that we're both agreed, it's law. And I can take you to any court. I can take you to my court, to the trust court. I can take you to their court and tell them enforce this contract. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to tell you guys this. Anybody looking into that invisible contracts, where Brian and I were saying, write your own contracts. Okay? Include penal clauses. When they're prosecuting you guys for penal violations, they're just being dicks, and that's why it's called penal. Okay? And you agreed to it. But in your contract, you're not putting penal clauses in there. Okay, so you take the benefits and you don't fulfill your duties and responsibilities. You're agreeing to be held in the custody of Sheriff so and so, whoever the current office holder is, in such and such correctional institution for 6 months. Make your contracts enforceable. Give them something to enforce and to execute.
Give them some teeth.
Give them some teeth.
Yep.
Okay.
Jules, Cecelia, I was going to open up. If anybody had a question, we could take a couple questions here before we end this.
Oh, yeah.
If you guys can, or if you ladies can stay with us for a couple more minutes.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, so I will just unmute everybody. So if you don't plan on speaking, please mute yourself just to back off the noise that might come across. And just try not to step on each other, and let us know who you are, where you hail from, and give us a quick question or comment. Thank you.
And who you want to answer the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, hi everybody. This is Keith here.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Keith is our co-host. When I muted the board, I think he went mute as well. We had to back off. There was some extra noise coming across there, Keith. But anyway, yeah, what's up, brother?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I appreciate that too, though. I kind of get a little busy in the background sometimes. I forget my mic's open. First of all, I want to say thanks, Jules. Very well spoken, and I want to let everybody know I appreciate your efforts in all of the world, dear sister. This is one of the gals that tried to help round up bond for me when I was in my last court case almost 6 years ago. She knows what she's talking about. And in reference to that, in regards to trust law, folks, as far as I can say, the simplest thing I can say about trust law is there's 4 elements in trust law everybody should concentrate on. They're the basic foundation of all law, whether it's written or just in your heart. And it's based on the foundation of a simple contract, which takes no more than 2 people or 2 things, one giving and one taking. This is the grantor giving something in trust to the beneficiary. And it does not require a trustee. And this is based on the foundation of the beneficiary is not required to do anything. The beneficiary can dismiss the trustee. The beneficiary is deemed to be the true owner. And what is the other one?
And a trust will not fail for lack of trustee.
Right. The trust shall not fail for lack of a trustee. And this is what tells us about that concept of a simple contract being between 2 entities. It doesn't fail for want of trustee. So you can base your admissions on these 4 questions in all courts to bring in equity.
Okay. Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, we've been here for an hour and 25 minutes, and I try to keep these kind of brief. I don't like going with any real crazy long ones, just because people see the length of time and they kind of freak out. And I'm really glad Jules was able to join us this evening. We were talking about something a few days ago, and she just happened to message me just as we were getting ready to start up tonight's podcast. I'm like, oh, God, I'd love to have Jules on for this. And so it was definitely a divine intervention, I would say.
Yeah.
Brian, I want to tell you real quick. We wrapped I appreciate you guys letting me be a part of this call. I hope I didn't dominate it too much, but if you're interested, Brian, in doing a call on that affidavit, I think that people can really gain a lot of insight and break through the brainwashing if they can see that, and especially include a discussion on it. If you're interested, I'd be happy to come back and do that with you.
Oh, yes, I think that, and people aren't really aware of what we're talking about, but yeah, this is an affidavit that Jules was afforded that kind of broke down the relationship that people have, especially when it comes to the situation with the driver's license and these contracts. And, I really advise people, it's the quick go-to in a lot of the guru communities of, oh, yeah, get rid of this, get rid of that. I always say, hold on a minute, stop and see how you can use it to your benefit. And so comprehending these things would make a big difference.
Well, and the thing is about that affidavit is a lot of people get on calls and they're discussing theory. Okay. And now we're not with this David, we're not discussing theory. Okay. Possibilities. Now we're talking about fact. Okay, a sworn affidavit, and if we can go into the details of what we're kind of skimming over. I know it's probably confusing for anybody listening right now, but it is literally fact and full disclosure in this affidavit. And once you understand it, you can see it happening in your other rights as well. So I look forward to you doing that call. If let me know, and I'd be super happy to join you on that call for that discussion.
We could do that and break that down next week, since we're mentioning it here this week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to, yeah. You'll have to remind me the day before.
No problem. No problem. It's a plan, and I'll shoot you the link.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Thanks for being on, Jules.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Cecelia.
Mm-hmm.
And as I try to remind people every week, because a lot of people are, where do I start learning? What do I need to do? And what I always tell people is you need to realize who you really are, where you're really at, and where you're really from, because you've been deceived on every level of those. And that will put you leaps and bounds ahead of others. We will see you next Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Tactical Sovereignty. You can also join us on Facebook. Good night, everybody.